one of the big crises of our times currently is housing. I'm sure a lot of you have noticed, especially those of you who are a bit older, who aren't like, teenaged. I'm sure a lot of you have noticed that rents have been going through the roof, that both rents and the prices of homes have been skyrocketing. Absolutely skyrocketing. And there doesn't seem to be an end in sight. And it seems like a lot of this has to do with corporate investment into land, into property. Corporate investment into property is, when statistically broken down, one of the safest investments for money that you can make. Sue Brown 7768, thank you so much for the follow. Property has really good return rates. It's generally pretty reliable when it comes to financing. And so what has been going on for the past, since 2008 really, has been a consolidation of hedge funds behind corporate investment in property. So we have places like BlackRock. I believe that's what they're called, BlackRock. They invest in property. In fact, an absurd amount, like was it 4 in every 10? 2 in every 10? 7 out of 10? Yeah, I need to look up that statistic real quick. But a lot of people owned by finance. Zillow is also in the same business. They are buying properties and flipping them for a profit. There was literally a house sold near me for $50K that had no windows. Yeah, well, and also there are overseas corporations that are buying property in the United States to launder money. There will be foreign investors who buy property in the United States just to squat on it and hold it and not do anything with it. There are properties that have been owned for like over a decade that no one has lived in because they are being used as money sinks. I bought my house for $171K in 2017. It's over $350K. Yo, that's wild. How about a house half burned down going as is for $330,000? Yep. If you don't live in the country, you shouldn't be able to buy property in the country. I mean, yeah. Frankly, this is a symptom of how capitalism seeks to use any and everything to be able to leverage profits. The book Kleptopia covers this. Yeah. There is this ongoing... But here, it goes further than just, like, rich people are buying up apartments or whatever. Because they are doing that. There are empty buildings, empty apartment buildings in New York City. Just to hold wealth. The same thing happens in Sydney. It's happening all across the world. All across the world. And it's because there are these hedge funds funded by billionaires, funded by millionaires, that are able to wield incalculable amounts of money and to leverage that incalculable amount of wealth to get loans for even more wealth, to buy even more property. Individuals in that kind of a system cannot compete against these hedge funds. We cannot compete against these larger companies, which is why we are essentially at the whims of these companies. They're able to buy entire neighborhoods and turn them into Airbnbs. They're able to buy entire neighborhoods and turn them into rental properties. They're able to buy entire sections of a city and just sit on that property and do nothing with it because they know that that property share, just owning it, is going to jack up the prices of other buildings that they own, rent out, or sell. And it's getting to the point where people can't take it anymore. People can't live anywhere anymore. So we're going to look at how did it get this bad? How did it really get this bad? I found this interesting video from, I believe, Vox, and we're going to take a look at it. All right.
So I spend a lot of time looking at houses on Zillow. And lately, I noticed that even in places where houses are usually expensive, they seem even more expensive. Like here in the San Francisco Bay Area.
What has the last year been like?
It's shocking. Buyers are paying 15 to 20% above asking price now. I had a listing in South San Francisco, 32 offers, 31 very unhappy buyers.
So, by the way, this is one of the ways that they are able to get away with doing this, right? They're able to, because of how much wealth they wield, make offers in cash. Instead of there being bank loans involved, which involves a certain amount of risk being taken, instead these hedge funds can just come in, pay with cash, and then go on their merry way with the deed to the property. Also, because they're leveraging so much cash, they can outbid every single bidder. Because most of us individuals, we don't have that much money. We have a budget we need to maintain. They can bid above budget.
For years, the Bay Area has been an extreme example of how difficult it is to find affordable housing in the US. It's where Silicon Valley bus drivers sleep in their cars at night because they can't afford housing near work, and where school teachers can't afford to live in the counties they teach. But it's not just the Bay Area. The lack of affordable housing is a national problem, and right now it's worse than ever.
We've seen over the last year housing prices reach a level that they've never reached before in American history. They kind of just look like a rocket ship, going to the moon. Housing prices reaching a median of $350,000 for the median American home.
Those prices have made rents more expensive and have made homeownership less attainable for millions of Americans.
So, why is this happening? And how do we bring that rocket ship closer to Earth?
And here's the secret, folks. The solution behind bringing the rocket ship closer to Earth involves dismantling this capitalist exploitation of land. Have Boeing make it, lol. But the issue is, this isn't something that can be solved by regulating capitalism and then just like going and whistling along our merry way, because capitalism, these exceedingly rich entities, are capable of lobbying the government with incalculable amounts of wealth to undo those regulations as time goes on, or even to prevent them from passing in the first place, right? So this is, by the way, one of the reasons why I really support Wolfpack. Let's get money out of politics. Let's make it so that lobbying isn't this massive industrial undertaking that can change public policy away from what's actually good for the public. Because frankly, this makes sense from like a capitalistic perspective. It makes sense to keep charging as much rent as you can until everyone is crushed underneath your heel. It makes sense for rich people to be able to invest in these properties and make money on their investments. That makes sense under capitalism. But capitalism isn't good for most people. It's good only for the top 1% of people.
We can think of today's housing prices in terms of a supply and demand problem. On the demand side, there are a few things happening. The first is a generational shift in who's buying homes.
Millennials are the biggest generation in American history, and they're aging into their prime home buying years.
On top of that, mortgage rates are at an all-time low, which means it's very cheap to borrow the money needed to buy a house. That's enticed more people to buy if they can, making demand for houses even higher. The problem is that supply isn't matching that demand. From 2010 to 2019, there were fewer homes built in the US than in any decade since the 1960s. In particular, the construction of smaller, entry-level houses.
Real quick. Let's see. There are, let's see. Chat, does anyone want to actually take a guess at how many empty homes there are in the United States? Anyone want to guess? 12 million? 15 million? 5 million? 60 million? 10 million? There are 17 million vacant homes in the United States. The idea that we're just not building enough homes. There just aren't enough homes to go around, folks. There are 17 million unused homes across the United States. 17 million. Even if we gave one home to every single homeless person currently, we would still have somewhere around 16 million homes. I might have gotten my my math incorrect here. Wait, how many homeless in America? Yeah, there are 553,742 people in the United States experiencing homelessness on any given night. So, yeah, even if we gave each of those people a home, we'd still have over 6 million homes on the market. And I'm a millennial, guys. I can't even imagine owning a home right now. I do Twitch full time, which, by the way, if you want to throw me some bits and subs for putting on a show for all of you and educating and doing this entire thing, I am funded entirely by people on Twitch, so I would very much appreciate the help, especially considering I'm moving into an apartment soon. A new apartment, I should say. Give me a house. Yeah, no kidding. I'm a boomer. I've never been able to own a house. Dang, Ashley, I'm sorry to hear that. Yeah, this stream brought to you by viewers like you.
Housing, the kind made for first-time home buyers, has dropped dramatically. In the 1980s, those starter homes made up around...
Oh yeah, no, Detken, we covered this the other day. If Joe Biden abolished student debt in this country, the economic boom that would create would be equal to like 108 trillion, 108, sorry, not 108 trillion, wow, $108 billion every year.
40% of all homes built. Today, it's closer to 7%. In 2018, one estimate said the U.S. housing market was 2.5 million homes short of meeting demand. By the end of 2020...
Yeah, those statistics were from 2017.
It was 3.8 million.
And that's driving a big part of the problem, both for renters and for people who want to be homeowners.
The shortage is worst in the places where demand is highest, near good jobs, transit, and schools. And one pretty straightforward solution to that is to just build more homes in those places. But for years, there's been one big obstacle to that. We aren't allowed to. Take a look at this map of the Bay Area. It's showing something called zoning, or local regulations that decide what can be built where. This much of the region is zoned for residential housing. In blue are areas zoned to allow multifamily housing, while the areas shaded in pink are zoned for single-family housing only. That's 82% of all residential land in the Bay Area.
What it means is that you've banned the ability for anyone to build anything other than a single unit of housing on that lot of land.
And in many towns, like Atherton, they've excluded all multifamily housing from their neighborhoods.
And that doesn't just mean a giant apartment building. It means things like duplexes, things like, fourplexes, things like that are illegal in the majority of the country.
This is an example of something called exclusionary zoning. It's a big part of the reason for the housing supply shortage in the US. And single-family only zoning is just one way local laws limit how much housing we can build. Many places also employ height restrictions. In Cupertino, California, some areas are zoned for multifamily buildings, but they don't allow any buildings over 2 stories. Parking requirements are often written into zoning laws too. Cupertino requires developers to set aside space for 2 parking spaces for each unit of multifamily housing. That means if you were building an apartment complex that had 100 units, you'd need to find space for 200 parking spots, which usually means buildings that size don't get built at all.
They lower the number of units they're actually building so they can save space for those parking spaces. And then those units become more expensive because the land still stays the same cost to the developer. And you then get a situation where potentially more affordable units turn into higher income servicing units.
Another feature of many zoning laws is minimum lot sizes. It means builders are legally required to allot a minimum amount of land for each home, often a large amount of land. In Cupertino, most single-family lots must be at least 5,000 square feet each.
Starter homes are usually around 1,400 to 1,500 square feet, and so you've basically banned all that type of housing.
In Atherton, the minimum lot size for homes is 1 acre, more than 43,000 square feet, which makes it virtually impossible to build any kind of affordable home there. Together, exclusionary zoning laws like this
Hey, sneaky peek. Thank you so much for the subscription.
push builders across the country to focus on bigger luxury homes instead of smaller starter homes or multifamily housing.
Essentially creating gated communities in public spaces. What you are saying is that you are only allowing people who have already been able to partake in the wealth of this country and to grow their income and have access to high opportunity jobs and education to live in our neighborhoods.
Historically, some of the first zoning laws in the US were engineered for that exactly, to block people of color, and in particular Black Americans, from living in predominantly white neighborhoods. Today, the laws don't explicitly mention race, but they continue to worsen segregation. In the Bay Area, the more single-family zoning in a neighborhood, the whiter it is. But all this has another effect as well. By shrinking the pot of new housing getting built, while demand keeps rising, it drives up the cost of housing for everyone. Changing zoning laws can be difficult, and often the biggest obstacles are the wealthiest residents.
The process is usually defined by who shows up to these public meetings, and what you have is often a much whiter, wealthier crowd, the ones who come and say, I don't want this in my community, I'm concerned about what will happen to my property values, and then there's this kind of code word, neighborhood character.
Remember those teachers I mentioned who can't afford to live in the counties where they teach? Well, in 2018, one local school district proposed a solution: building affordable housing units for teachers in San Jose.
I remember
caused
this.
an uproar among San Jose parents, who petitioned against changing the neighborhood. It may not seem like a big deal when one wealthy neighborhood blocks one multifamily development. The problem is that it happens all the time. Communities block new housing everywhere.
People are, when they hear this kind of rhetoric, very confused because they're like, why I don't want to live in a place with 10,000 apartment buildings. It doesn't even make sense to do that. And they're right. No one is saying that there should be every neighborhood in every city should be, 10,000 foot apartment buildings or anything like that.
But even small, gradual changes to zoning laws can have an impact. For example, allowing smaller homes on smaller lots, or simply allowing duplexes would double capacity for housing in some areas. In recent years, some cities like Berkeley, Minneapolis, and Portland have taken the huge step of ending single-family zoning. But the problem is nationwide.
Hey, Dirty Laundry, thank you for gifting out 2 Tier 1 subs. I really appreciate that. Also, Suspect161, thank you for the follow.
The real fix is going to happen when these decisions start being made and start being regulated at the statewide level or at the federal level in some capacity.
Today, the Biden administration is attempting to tackle exclusionary zoning through a $5 billion program that would give money to localities that remove exclusionary zoning.
Slammed in Camberred. Camberred? TTV, thank you so much for the follow.
Policies, but even that may not be
Tea with
enough.
Goblins,
This is
thank
more
you so
than
much.
any presidential administration has done on this topic, either Democrat or Republican. It is also very small in the face of this problem. They want to take action, they recognize how big of a deal it is, but they are not actually willing to create the kind of political blowback from often very high-value voters living in suburban environments.
Ending America's housing shortage will require real political willpower, and it'll require people across the country to take a look at their own neighborhoods. What gets built, who gets excluded, and how to make homeownership achievable for the millions who are shut out.
This is a really good video. It brings up a lot of really good points that I hadn't been addressing with my clarifications. I just want to point out that this video is absolutely correct that zoning is a huge issue, right? When Donald Trump was talking about how he had saved women in the suburbs, white women in the suburbs from low-income housing, he was talking about zoning laws. He was talking about low-income housing being required to be built in the suburbs. This is stuff that that is a known huge issue, especially, by the way, especially if you're super racist. If you're a super racist white person, I guarantee you know these zoning laws. I guarantee. All right? Rumble Smash, I think you just had a cat on your keyboard. Let's see here. But here's one of the issues that I wanted to shine a light on, okay, with this subject. Home buyers face increased competition from investors. Let's see here. Investors purchased 67,943 houses during the second quarter of 2021, the highest quarterly figure on record. Redfin's records go back to 2000. 1 of every 6 homes, 15.9%, purchased during the second quarter of this year was bought by an investor, nearly the same as the record market share of 16.1% in the first quarter of 2020. Investor purchases increased by 15.1% from the first quarter of 2021 to the second quarter of 2021. And predominantly, these purchases are happening in low-income housing areas. So it's not just the fight against zoning laws. It's increasingly the zoning laws combined with investors who are coming in and snapping up all of those low-income homes because they know they can rent out those homes. Because they know millennials are being priced out of the market. That we, by and large, can't afford homes. Because we, by the way, millennials, in case you guys missed the report, we possess something along the lines of 5% of the wealth in the United States. We're making multiple times less money and less wealth than previous generations in this country. The ability for us to actually buy homes and build wealth like previous generations has gone down the tank. All right? let's see. Investors tend to gravitate towards less costly homes, with 21% of low-priced homes purchased by an investor in the second quarter of 2021. Like, almost over a fifth of affordable housing in this country is bought out by investors. And again, that's not to mention that 17 million homes in this country are already vacant. Goodness. James from the internet was discussing earlier today how he used to live in a rent-controlled apartment in Los Angeles for about 6 years. He paid $400 per month in LA. That is wild for me to even wrap my head around. I have friends who moved to LA and lived in, like, literal closets. Oh yeah, it's true, dirty laundry. We just eat too much toast. That's the real problem. Goodness. They want serfs and neo-feudalism. Yeah, I mean, that can... You know, the major tech companies like Amazon, Google, Tesla... Oh yeah, they're absolutely out there looking for building neo-feudalism in their own, like, marketplaces, reinventing the company town. Yeah, London's the same. Yeah, absolutely. I just want to blame the boomers and call it a day. Well, unfortunately, folks, it's not boomers. It's capitalism. It's not generations. It's the system.